Thank you, Amber. I appreciate the kind introduction, and thank you all for taking a little time out of your busy weekend. I know how busy we all are. I want to take a few minutes just to lay out my case, why I'm running, what I think I bring to the table. I love part of this process because I get to know people like Amy Klobuchar better. We see each other at these various events, and I can't tell you how much I admire pretty much every other candidate who's running. I'm running for president because I view this country as being in the middle of a crisis of division. I don't think we've been this divided since the Civil War. And it keeps us from addressing the big issues like climate change and universal health care coverage, gun safety laws, and women's reproductive rights. And I think that in a unique way, my experience has prepared me just for this moment in time. I grew up outside Philadelphia. My mother was a child of the Depression. She grew up, never bought a dress. She sewed everything she wore. She would wash tinfoil and tape it to the refrigerator door so she could reuse it. I'm not making that up. And she was resilient. My mother was widowed twice before she turned 40. She had 2 kids by each of her husbands, so by the time she was 40, she was a single mom, and she raised all 4 of us by herself. I never heard her complain once. She would say, you cannot control what life throws at you, but you can control how you respond. And that resilience and that grit served me well. I came out to Colorado in 1981 as a geologist. I had a company car. I thought I'd be a geologist for the rest of my life. And the bottom line is that you can't control what life throws at you. And there was a recession. Our company got sold. I lost my job, as did literally thousands of other geologists. And I was lucky. A couple friends and I started this newfangled thing called a brew pub, a restaurant that brews its own beer. We went into an abandoned part of downtown Denver called Lower Downtown, where the rent was $1 per square foot per year. It took us 2 years to get this thing open. I was out of work for over 2 years, and I can tell you, it changes you in some powerful way. After 7 or 8 or 9 months, you see a different person in the mirror, and you either you're gonna toughen up and work harder, or you're gonna accept what life throws at you. We built this brew pub. We worked with the other restaurateurs, and after about 4 or 5 years of working 70 and 80 hours a week, and I know many of you know what that's like, it began to take off. And we opened 14 brew pubs in cities and towns, mostly across the Midwest, all in historic buildings. I'm the only elected official that ever won the Award of Honor from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And in that network, we created opportunity where in many cases there had been no opportunity, no new jobs for a long time. And I learned firsthand that a true entrepreneur defines success not by how often you say you're fired, but how often you say you're hired. And we came in 2003 for a variety of reasons I won't bore you with, but I was cajoled into running for mayor of Denver, and Denver's a strong mayor form of government. In 2003, I ran for mayor. It was the first time I ever ran for anything in my whole life. I never even ran for student council or dog catcher. And I ran on the premise that we weren't going to attack anyone else. I wasn't going to make enemies and get myself in the newspaper by how well I attacked somebody, which is what many politicians do. And I ran on the premise that we were going to work together as a region, not just the city of Denver, which is 20% of that region. And I ran on the premise that we were going to stop doing what I called the fundamental nonsense of government, making decisions based on our own convenience. And people say, well, you're never going to win. You know, you can't promise to help the suburbs when the voters of Denver are going to hate you. I got 65% of that vote. And within 3 years, we worked with all those mayors to create fast tracks, 122 miles of light rail track, the most ambitious transit initiative in modern American history. Within 3 years, we got businesses and nonprofits. We got Republicans and Democrats to work together to provide universal pre-K in the entire city of Denver. Within 5 years, we reduced chronic homelessness by 75%. And in every case, it was getting people to work together and doing these big progressive goals that people said couldn't be done, that Washington hadn't delivered. And I ran in 2010 to be governor of Colorado in a tough year for Democrats, in a purple state, and I won by 13 points. And when I did, I became the first Denver mayor in 120 years to become elected governor of Colorado. And I did that by making that same commitment. We were going to bring business and nonprofits together. We were going to get Republicans and Democrats and independents to tackle the big, challenging issues. And we were going to re-kick our economy. At that time, we were 40th in job creation, but we were going to do it by working together. And we didn't demonize business. We realized we had to be progressive, but we were going to be pragmatic. And pragmatic doesn't mean you don't do the big progressive things. It means you figure out how to get them done. And we got to near universal health care with the most innovative and ambitious healthcare exchange in the country. We took on the oil and gas industry and got them to sit at the table with the environmental community and create the first set of methane regulations in the country. Keep in mind, methane is 25 times worse than CO2 in terms of climate change. We were the first state to actually do it, and our methane regulations are now being rolled out as national policy in Canada. And we were also able to sit down, and in a purple state, we beat the NRA. We passed universal background checks and limited magazine capacities. Now, I respect all these senators in Washington, the people that are working hard and they're talking, but I'm a doer, right? And I think to beat Trump in Ohio and North Carolina and Pennsylvania and Michigan, we need someone who can demonstrate that we've created apprenticeships and skills-based training at a scale that's never been done before in this country, that we can generate the jobs and the trained workers to make sure we can accommodate those emerging jobs, and I can make sure that we share that prosperity and make sure our middle class begins to grow again. I can also guarantee that we will bring honesty and common decency back to the White House, and we will restore America's role as the leader of the free world. Now, I realize I'm from Colorado, and people say, well, it's not going to work so well in Washington. Well, I get that. And, Mitch McConnell, I think he's about as far gone as a person could be, right? When he said he was going to do whatever it took to make sure Barack Obama was not going to be successful as president, I think that's almost verging on treason. But I do think we can get other Republicans to work together. I do think to tackle climate change, to get to universal health care, to really get responsible gun regulations done, we're going to need everybody on the table. And I'll tell you, when I first ran for mayor and I was at 3%, 4% in the polls week after week, I told this story about a professor of public speaking, University of Wyoming, talking about the importance of using opposites when you speak publicly. If you're going to talk about the worst of times, you talk about the best of times. You're going to talk about the agony, talk about the ecstasy. The words gain power by being together. And I will tell you now that when I got up in front of those kids, I was trying to inspire them. I said, the teacher asked her class, what's the opposite of despair? And the kid in the back said, joy. And she goes, exactly. If you want people to feel despair, use joy in the same sentence. And then she asked her class, what's the opposite of woe? And the kid way in the back says, giddy up. And just like my mother said, the opposite of woe pretty much is giddy up. And I learned in Colorado, we went through the worst droughts, the worst wildfires, the worst shooting in that Aurora movie theater. I learned you can't go back and just rebuild things to what they were. You got to make it better than it was before. My commitment to you is that together we can giddy up, work harder where it's needed, and make sure we take America back, not just to where we were, but we'll rebuild America better than it was before and provide the momentum for this country to become the great country it always has been and make it better still. Thank you very much.